On the day we moved into our new house, I expected the start of a new chapter in our lives, but an unexpected event awaited me. As soon as we finished moving in, another large truck quietly stopped in front of our house. I became a bit anxious and asked my husband, "Is this truck ours?" Then the words my husband cheerfully uttered reached my ears. "Actually, from now on, my parents will live here with us." What, really? Why? I was so surprised that I couldn't find the words to respond. My in-laws went further and said, "If you oppose, we don't need such a daughter-in-law. You can't even show respect for us." At that moment, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Does this mean our married life is over?" I asked while laughing. "Huh?" My husband looked confused. This is the moment I, just after moving into our new house, realized there was a big gap between me, my husband, and my in-laws. I, Samantha, a housewife in my 30s, have been married to Victor for 5 years, and we have a lovely 4-year-old son. Initially, I quit my job to focus on the family. But now that our son is a bit older, I've started working again, full-time on weekdays. When I first met Victor, he was very kind and a bit laid back, which I found charming. Above all, I was moved by how he always put me first, which led me to decide on marriage. However, over time, some issues emerged between me and Victor's family. They cared too much about appearances, prioritizing their reputation over others' feelings. This was especially evident during our wedding preparations. They insisted on a grand ceremony, saying, "It's the eldest son's wedding, so it must be grand." I wanted a small, intimate celebration with close friends and family. But my in-laws wouldn't allow it. They argued that a modest wedding would be embarrassing and tarnish the family's honor. Victor's family is not particularly prestigious. His father is just a retired office worker, and his mother is a stay-at-home wife. Their home is just a mere rental, not fancy at all. Yet, they place great importance on how they're perceived externally. They eventually declared they would cover the ceremony costs, unilaterally booking a familiar venue. To avoid premarital conflicts, I reluctantly agreed to their plan, only to later realize it had placed a significant burden on my family. The groom's side, my in-laws, only covered their expenses, leaving my family to bear the rest. And during childbirth, the words my mother-in-law uttered while I was in labor painfully highlighted their values. The baby isn't born yet." I rushed over thinking I'd meet them already. This is a bit boring. Maybe I'll have some coffee while waiting," she casually complained beside my hospital bed. While I was in pain, my mother-in-law relaxed beside me as if at a tea party. "Samantha, are you listening?" She casually spoke to me, enduring pain. Even then, Victor was just an onlooker. He could have shown a bit more consideration. I was once attracted to his laid-back nature, but now it just seemed like insensitivity. Perhaps for him, his parents' behavior was completely normal. And this insensitivity continued after our son was born. Leaving me alone immediately after our son's birth, his parents, calling it a celebration, held a late-night party at our home, demanding snacks and drinks. Even when our son cried, no one made an effort to soothe him. That's why I kept a distance from my in-laws, maintaining only minimal contact. However, there came a time when we inevitably had to engage closely with them. We, a family of 3, were living comfortably in a rented apartment, but as our son grew, we started considering buying a house. Building a house is not just a decision. It's a major undertaking. It starts with finding a land, selecting a construction company, and involves countless meetings right down to the details of the interior. Both of us working, our weekdays were busy. So the meetings for the house were concentrated on weekends. Since it was challenging to take our son to long meetings, we often left him with my parents. But the day before our next meeting, my mother called to say she caught a cold and couldn't take care of him to avoid passing it on to him. When I discussed it with Victor, he suggested, "Why don't we leave him with my parents for a change?" I was reluctant to rely on my in-laws, but Victor didn't wait for my response and called them saying, "Can we ask you to take care of him for a day? Don't worry, it's just for one day. We'll bring a souvenir." Despite my apologies for the sudden request, Victor assured, "It's fine, they'll just look after him for a day," and ended the call. That moment planted a seed of anxiety in me. The next morning, we took our son to my in-laws and headed to our meeting. We bought sweets on the way back for them, appreciative yet eager to leave. As anticipated, my in-laws detained us, inquiring excitedly about the house. "Are you building a single or two-story house? Perhaps one of those trendy garage houses? Are you getting a system kitchen? It must make cooking so convenient for the younger generation. I'd probably cook more if I had one." My mother-in-law joined in with interest. Victor responded, "Samantha decided on the kitchen since I don't cook." Hearing this, my mother-in-law expressed a longing wish to try out the new kitchen. Trying to maintain a pleasant atmosphere, I suggested, "Why don't you consider updating your kitchen too?" However, she replied, "We don't have the money for that. If you're offering, I'd love a renovation." Victor casually said, "Once our house is built, come over. You can even try the kitchen." The kitchen is like a sanctuary to me, and the thought of others using it felt intrusive. After enduring more house-related questions, we were finally freed 2 hours later. On the way home, I shared my concerns with Victor. "Your parents seem very interested in our house, but they're not planning to live with us, right?" He reassured, "No, the house is for our family, and the kitchen is for you to use however she likes." Trusting his words, I calmed down. Since then, my in-laws became more involved in our house planning, offering to watch our son during meetings and suggesting various design ideas. "Show me the blueprint, let me give you some advice," my father-in-law would say, inquiring about the bathroom and living room sizes. He even advised on future-proofing the house. "It's good to have handrails at the entrance for when you're moving things around." My mother-in-law suggested a guest room would be calming and inquired about the kitchen sink height, too high, and it'll be hard to cook if you hurt your back. Their involvement grew, with advice on even the tiniest details. When I explained about the height of the sink, my mother-in-law immediately remarked, "This is a bit inconvenient for me to use." She advised, "It would be better if it were a bit lower." "It doesn't suit my height," to which I inadvertently responded, "I designed it to be most convenient for me." Hearing this, my father-in-law joined in, asserting, "The house isn't just for you alone. Victor will use it too, so it needs to be convenient for everyone." Though he said it's for everyone, I couldn't help but think, do I have to change everything just for the occasional visits of my in-laws? I glanced at Victor for support, but he just silently nodded. I began to wonder, for whom are we really building this house? With such exchanges recurring, my spirit wore down. I approached Victor, suggesting, "Let's stop leaving our child with your parents and ask them not to interfere with the new house discussions." However, Victor didn't see my point, saying, "They are doing us a favor when they look after our son. What's the big deal if they give some input? Aren't you overreacting?" I pressed further, "But don't you think your parents are pushing their opinions too much? Are they planning to live with us?" Victor suddenly got angry and shouted, "How many times do I have to say it? The house is for our family. If you keep nagging about this, we might as well divorce." I was confused. How did a discussion about the new house lead to talks of divorce? From then on, Victor started to threaten divorce over trivial matters. On another day, my in-laws visited and reignited the conversation about the new house. "Shouldn't we rethink the location of the bathroom?" my father-in-law suggested, and my mother-in-law agreed. Yes, this way would be more convenient. Victor was ready to call for changes, aligning with their opinion. When I firmly stated, "This part is already decided," my father-in-law became irritated. "It's not your place to speak. You should respect the opinions of your elders," he scolded loudly. My mother-in-law added subtly, "We're saying this for your own good." Yet, there was a coldness to her words. With no support from Victor, who lightly remarked, "They're just trying to help. Why not listen a bit?" My father-in-law turned to Victor and said, "Couldn't you have found a more understanding woman?" Victor responded, "Don't say that, Dad. Samantha, apologize. Otherwise, we're heading for divorce." I could only respond with disbelief. Internally, I felt at my limit. The relationship with my in-laws was always challenging, but recently Victor has become increasingly submissive to them. The kind Victor I knew was gone, replaced by a husband under his parents' influence. The excitement of building a new home had turned into daily heartache from interactions with my in-laws. Any complaints to Victor were met with threats of divorce. At one point, he even showed me a filled-out divorce form. "Why are you so cold? My parents are just trying to give advice, thinking of us. They take good care of our son, don't they? If you keep this up, I'm seriously considering divorce," Victor began to say. I was stunned. It was clear he would always side with his parents. Their care for our son was minimal. My parents were the true support, responding to sudden calls from daycare and caring for our son when I was sick. While my parents prepared birthday and Christmas gifts, my in-laws never presented a gift to our son, yet they always demanded something from us during visits. Victor wasn't seeing the reality of our family. Exhausted, I fled to my parents' home. Seeing my state, my mother immediately sensed something was wrong and kindly asked, "What's the matter? Are you troubled by something?" After I confided everything to her, she said, "You can always come back here." Her words lightened my heart. Indeed, I didn't need to force myself to fit in with that family. It was just a matter of making a decision. But my concern was our son. We just built a new house, envisioning a happy future there. But my in-laws' interfering increased, and it felt like it wouldn't be long before they took over the house. The thought of being constantly targeted and used by them was unbearable. Yet, if I suggested divorce, Victor would surely refuse. Despite often mentioning divorce, his family cared about appearances, so I doubted it would go smoothly. Thus, I started preparing for a possible situation. Finally, our new house was completed. When the three of us went to see it, our son was thrilled, running around the new space. Surrounded by the new house's scent, I felt the reality of achieving our ideal home. Victor and I discussed the moving details. The plan was to leave the second floor, designated for the guest room and our son's room, empty for a while, using it as temporary storage. I shared this plan with Victor, but he only responded, "Make sure to organize the stuff," while saying, "Why rush?" I already had a suspicion. Then the moving day arrived. After leaving our son with my parents, I immersed myself in unpacking alone. But soon, I noticed Victor was missing. When I found him, he was on a call saying, "What? You're coming now? But we're still unpacking." I sighed internally. "Your parents again?" Soon, another truck stopped in front of our house. I thought it was a forgotten item, but when the doorbell rang, my in-laws were there, carrying their belongings. My father-in-law entered briskly, asking, "Is everything unpacked?" Then glanced around and remarked, "Oh, it's not organized at all. It must have been hard for you, Samantha, to do this alone." Behind him, movers stood with large protective covers, politely asking, "Hello, is it okay to start the work here?" Confused, I thought. What work are they talking about? My in-laws quickly instructed the workers to begin, and they invaded our new home. I asked Victor urgently, "What's going on?" He replied, "Actually, we're going to live together now. My parents have always helped us a lot, especially with our son, so it's more convenient." I wasn't aware of this plan. I objected, to which he said, "I'm the head of this household. My parents have always advised us on the house. Mom is looking forward to living here." "Wait, this house is for us and our son. There was no plan for your parents' rooms," I argued. Then, my father-in-law demanded, "The largest room on the second floor will be mine." My mother-in-law added, "And the room next to it will be mine. I wonder if the curtains I measured will fit." In confusion, I asked Victor, "Isn't this the first time your parents are visiting our house?" He revealed, no, they had been here before the viewing. "Why?" I inquired, to which he replied, "They wanted to see the house first, so I gave them the keys." At that moment, anger surged within me. I couldn't believe that my in-laws had inspected the house we put our hearts into and even decided on their rooms without us. "Why didn't you consult me? This is our family's home. I can't accept that our son's room will be taken away." I strongly protested to Victor. He retorted, We won't use his room or the guest room right away, right? The guest room is for when someone visits, isn't it? So what's the difference if my parents use it? He continued, didn't we agree to live with a family? That family includes my parents. Was I deceived? I asked in shock. Victor firmly stated, you're the one who was mistaken. I'm the head of the house, so no complaining. Then my in-laws chimed in. What's wrong with her? Is it such a problem for us to live together? Quite presumptuous for a daughter-in-law. My father-in-law criticized. It's natural for children to take care of their parents, isn't it? You're part of our family, so it's natural for you to take care of us. My mother-in-law added. But we built this house for our family to live in. Even the kitchen was designed for me to use, I counted. You will do the housework, right? So there's no problem, my mother-in-law stated. A daughter-in-law doing household chores is only natural, my father-in-law added. So, you're saying you won't do any housework? I questioned. Of course. What a noisy daughter-in-law. Victor, you don't need such a wife. Divorce her. My father-in-law shouted. Victor also declared, don't talk like that to my parents. We really will get a divorce. There it was, the mention of divorce. So, you're considering divorce, aren't you? Huh? At the moment, I couldn't help but laugh. We're practically divorced already, aren't we? I said, while Victor and his parents looked shocked. We're not legally divorced yet, I mentioned, presenting the filled-out divorce papers to him. What's this? Victor exclaimed. The divorce papers you handed me while saying I'll divorce you. Don't you remember? I retorted. That was a joke, he claimed, but I challenged, threatening divorce every day. And it's a joke? We're a couple, aren't we? Just a joke, he tried to explain. I could only respond with a bitter smile. I've never heard of someone considering threats as jokes. Plus, I've recorded everything you've said, all your threats, I announced. Victor, in shock, exclaimed, What? Yes, I'm taking these recordings to a lawyer. We're getting a divorce, I declared. Victor, now panicked, asked, But what about this house? I wanted a happy life here with you and our son. But it seems you didn't. Go ahead, live here with your parents, I stated. Then I added, once we're divorced, return the $50,000 I contributed as down payment. And don't forget about child support. I'll be raising our son. With that, I took out a cardboard box I had prepared in advance. Inside were bags and backpacks filled with mine and my son's belongings, prepared just in case. Knowing that my in-laws were trying to take over the house and that Victor was complicit, I realized that divorce was my only option. However, Victor, who was concerned about appearances, wouldn't agree to a divorce quickly. The divorce papers were prepared by Victor, but I decided to use them. He might think it's just a threat, but since he had already filled them out, I used them to my advantage. However, I had to confirm his intent to divorce to avoid the divorce being invalidated, so I also made recordings. He probably thought I didn't have the courage to divorce him, especially with a young son involved. But I'm not alone. My parents support me, and I can't imagine what would happen to my son if we continued living with his family. Therefore, the best option was to divorce and leave. My parents have supported me and welcomed my son and me. This is your home, they told me as I arrived with my belongings. At the lawyer's office, I submitted the recorded data and the divorce papers to formally start the divorce process. Over the next week, Victor contacted me multiple times, but my decision was firm. I believe it was the best choice for my son and me. While I avoided Victor's calls, numerous messages were left on the answering machine, mainly about the house mortgage, with no mention of our son, apologies, or his parents. It seemed Victor was more concerned about the mortgage than the issues with his parents. No surprise there. Victor had no savings, often spending on hobbies like casinos and slot machines. The money actually used for the house was solely my savings from before our marriage. Although Victor said, "Don't worry, I'll put the mortgage under my name," I didn't trust his naive thinking. That's why I had him sign a loan agreement for $50,000, stating he borrowed this amount from me and would repay it. To Victor, borrowing money between spouses might not have seemed like a big deal, as he signed without complaint. This loan agreement became crucial just in case. Even though we used my savings for the down payment and the mortgage was in Victor's name, he likely depended on my income too. He probably intended to make me bear the living expenses after his parents moved in. I'm sure his thrifty parents wouldn't contribute to the living costs either, but I had already decided to divorce. As long as I received the money I gave him and child support, that was enough for me. I had no desire to speak with his family again, leaving all procedures to my lawyer. I submitted the loan agreement, intending to demand full repayment. I was prepared for a request to pay child support in installments. But due to their pride, they chose to settle it in one go to sever ties with me quickly. How they managed to arrange the funds, I do not know, but that's no longer my concern. A new future with my son awaits me. I was surprised by their decision, but learning they gave up living in the new house and chose to sell it gave me a sense of closure. Without me, the loan payments became a burden for them along with their dubious debts. Victor and his parents started a new life in a small apartment, facing financial difficulties. My mother-in-law, who had dreamed of a system kitchen, was deeply disappointed that her dream wouldn't come true. The kitchen, designed for my convenience, would have been too high for her, adding to her frustration. Moreover, the situation became even more complicated when the divorced sister-in-law and her children returned to Victor's parents' house. The addition of the unemployed sister-in-law, who had no desire to work, and her two sons, a middle schooler and an elementary schooler, made the house even more cramped. With only Victor's income and the meager pensions of his parents, their living situation became extremely difficult. With Victor burdened by debt repayment, their household finances were always in dire straits. There were constant complaints from neighbors about the never-ending arguments within the family. My sister-in-law complained that they were supposed to live in the new house, while my mother-in-law lamented the loss of the chance to use her dream system kitchen. Victor, frustrated, dived deeper into gambling, saying, "If you complain so much, I'll hit it big and buy a house or whatever," only increasing his debts. Rumors even surfaced that he borrowed more money from loan sharks, casting a shadow over their future. But this is all due to Victor, who always sided with his parents, so it's his own fault. I distanced myself from their life, starting anew with my son. Living in a rental apartment near my workplace is refreshing, and I find new energy in both my work and home life. When I come home late, my parents support me by taking care of my son, which gives me peace of mind. As I worked hard, I achieved results and improved my income. Thanks to this, I am planning a relaxing trip to a hotel with spa with my son and parents. My family is irreplaceable to me. Freed from the days of being manipulated by Victor and his parents, I'm now expressing my gratitude to my parents, who have always supported me, feeling the true happiness of family. Standing firmly on my own feet, I look forward to forging a new future with my precious family.
I've decided to divorce you. I'm leaving this house. Well, that's fine. Get that parasite out of here soon. David, we've finally gotten rid of the parasite, haven't we? I lived with my husband and his mother, my mother-in-law, dedicating myself to household chores for the sake of our family. One day while cleaning, I accidentally overheard a suspicious conversation between my husband and his mother. Hearing their talk shocked me, and just as I was about to leave the scene. Ouch. Surprised and shaken, I tripped over a small step in the hallway and fell. My husband and mother-in-law rushed over, but instead of worrying, they said something unbelievable. "What are you doing? It's really clumsy to fall during housework." "Hey, since housework is your only value, you should be more careful." Unable to bear their words any longer, I declared my intention to divorce my husband. "Ha, are you still saying that? Let's end this." I have already contacted my father, and he is coming to pick me up. Great timing. I wanted to say something to your father, too. I want to see what the face of a parasite's father looks like. My husband and mother-in-law laughed joyfully, unaware of anything, but then my father arrived. Emma, did you wait? David, playtime is over. What? Why is Mr. Hanson here? Really? At the sight of my father, my husband and mother-in-law turned pale and started trembling. Their reaction has a background, but this moment was also changing the lives of two people who had only seen me and my sister-in-law as mere tools. I'm Emma Simpson, 28 years old. I'm a part-time working housewife. I grew up in a single-father family. It's not because my parents divorced and my father had custody. I will explain the details now. Hey, make sure to check both right and left when crossing the street, and raise your hand when the light turns green to cross, okay? Yes, Mom, I'm fine. As a child, I often went for walks and shopping with my mother. During these times, she always held my hand and taught me traffic safety rules. This day was no exception, as I was walking as usual with my mother. Hey, Mom, that car is strange, isn't it? It keeps running even though the signal is red. Oh, really? But I'm sure it will notice and stop. Thinking so, we were crossing the pedestrian crossing when... Really? It's not stopping, coming straight at us. Emma, be careful. Ah. The car did not show any sign of stopping and charged forward, causing my mother to step in front of it to protect me, and she was hit by the strong impact. Thanks to my mother's sacrifice, I only suffered minor scrapes. Mom, please wake up. Respond to me. My mother was bleeding profusely and was unconscious on the ground. Bystanders immediately called an ambulance, and she was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. My mother passed away, never to return. Mommy, as a child, I couldn't fully grasp the reality and cried intensely, but it was my father who supported me then. Your mom protected you, Emma, so she must be happy with that. She will watch over you from heaven. If you keep crying, Mom will worry and cry in heaven too. Okay, I won't cry anymore. My mother's death in a traffic accident was deeply saddening, but with my father's words, I etched them into my heart and accepted reality. Surely, Dad must be sad too. Even so, my father never showed his grief openly, pouring all his love into raising me in place of my mother. As a result, even without my mother, I was able to grow up freely without feeling lonely. When I turned 23, a special event occurred on my birthday. Hey Emma, what kind of man is your type? Why the sudden question? Well, someone sincere and warm-hearted. If that's the case, Mr. Simpson from my workplace is perfect for you. I'll introduce you next time. Oh, really? Thank you. Following that conversation, my friend decided to introduce me to this man. Nice to meet you. I'm David Simpson. I've heard about you, and you are truly beautiful. Ah, thank you. I'm Emma Hanson. David, you are also very refreshing and wonderful. David was introduced by a friend as a businessman 2 years my senior. He was skilled in sales work and expected to be promoted in the future, despite his young age. Both his appearance and conversation made a good impression, and I genuinely felt he was the ideal partner. David, how do you spend your weekends? I often go fishing. Would you like to join me next time? That would be lovely, please. We enjoyed fishing together and shared many conversations over our dates. We started dating 6 months after we met, and a year after we met, a significant development occurred. Emma, I deeply love you. Will you marry me? David, I'm grateful. I love you too. Yes, please. This is how we decided to get married. However, our marriage could not proceed through the usual processes. There were specific circumstances for this reason. I'm sorry we couldn't meet your parents or have a wedding ceremony. I know you were looking forward to that. Indeed, I was looking forward to it, but it can't be helped. A global infectious disease is spreading. Indeed, it's unbelievable that we were able to deepen our relationship to this point and proceed with marriage before the global infectious disease spread. Because of this background, we submitted our marriage registration without having a wedding ceremony or meeting with parents. Even after marriage, we continued to live happily together. Our life together was very happy, but a year into our marriage, a greater joy came our way. Wow, she's so cute. Thank you for being born. Your name will be Claire. She's really cute. Claire, it's Daddy. Hey, David, you are totally smitten with little Claire, aren't you? A lovely daughter was born into our family. At that time, I think I felt the happiest I've ever been in my life. From now on, maybe our family will grow, and we might spend happy days together as 3 or more. Back then, I was quite optimistic about it. However, that happy atmosphere suddenly changed 3 years later. I was 28 years old at the time. When our daughter turned 3 and started going to kindergarten, my husband brought up an unexpected issue. My mother called, and she said that my father has passed away. She's alone and worried, so let's move in and live with her at our family home. Living with your mother? Are you serious? Of course. What's wrong? Do you hate the idea of living with my mother? No, it's not that. But it's so sudden? Strangers are strangers. We can't just move in together like this. Since we hadn't had a wedding ceremony or met face to face, I didn't know much about my mother-in-law. So the idea of suddenly living together was quite unsettling. Anyway, it's already decided. I'm worried about my mother, so it's only natural. Even if you say that. He was so adamant about his stance that I felt it was impossible to coexist with this man any longer. However, I thought it might be worth a try and reluctantly agreed. Because we had a daughter, I couldn't simply think about separation, and as a result, it was decided we would live with my in-laws. My father is also living alone at home. Even though I thought about this, the atmosphere was not receptive, so I gave up on saying it. David, welcome back. Oh, Emma is here too. And this must be my granddaughter Claire. She's very cute. Ah, Mother, nice to meet you. Sorry for not coming to greet you sooner. That's okay. There was an epidemic, after all. It can't be helped. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Thus, my mother-in-law warmly welcomed me and my daughter. Being the mother of my husband, she must be a kind person, right? I wanted to believe that, but a slight doubt remained in my mind. Maybe her kindness is only temporary. I thought this after seeing my husband's behavior when we decided to live together. Previously, he had always prioritized me and treated me with care. Despite this, he pushed his opinion unilaterally this time. I was concerned that my mother-in-law might eventually show her true nature and neglect me, leaving me uneasy. Living with my in-laws, I was constantly fearful of when my mother-in-law might reveal her true colors, but 6 months passed without incident. Maybe I'm being too wary of my mother-in-law. While I was thinking this way, a new person appeared, and the situation rapidly progressed. I'm home. Hey, listen, David. Lucy is back. Lucy, say hello. I'm home. It seemed my mother-in-law had been out, but as soon as she returned home, she excitedly spoke to my husband. Next to my mother-in-law stood a woman of about my age, modestly introduced as Lucy. Oh, Lucy, you're back. Where have you been wandering? Hey, David, who is Lucy? Ah, Emma. I hadn't told you yet, but she's my sister. What? I had no idea you had a sister. I was stunned by my husband's words. I had never heard that my husband had a sister, and her return was sudden. Looking at my husband and mother-in-law, it seemed she had returned for some reason. What will happen to our lives from now on? Who exactly is this sister-in-law? I was filled with anxiety about how our lives would change in the future. Another concern stood out: the noticeably protruding belly of my sister-in-law. Excuse me, Lucy. Nice to meet you. I'm David's wife, Emma. This might be a bit rude, but is that belly perhaps? Yes, as you guessed, I'm pregnant. I thought so. My sister-in-law's pregnancy was confirmed. Then, who is the father of this child? Did my sister-in-law return to her family home of her own will? The more I thought, the more questions arose and my head was in turmoil. Seeing this, my husband and mother-in-law looked at me and smirked, then uttered surprising words. Hey, Mem, Lucy is pregnant. It's worrying if she becomes a single mother. Yes, indeed. From now on, Lucy should live here with us permanently. I had not anticipated this sudden proposal to live together, nor this statement. But this time, I couldn't just comply with my husband and mother-in-law. I felt the need to have a serious discussion and settled my mind before speaking up. David, mother, please wait. Temporary co-living is one thing, but living here permanently is difficult. What's difficult about it? Are you saying it's okay to neglect Lucy while she's pregnant? That's terrible. It's like you have no feelings. No. That's not what I mean. But the increase in family members means increased food and utility costs, which significantly impacts our life. While both opinions remained unclear, My husband and mother-in-law took their time to explain their thoughts. Actually, the family home is spacious enough that adding one more person isn't a problem, they believe. Both of you, please consider our future life more seriously. I absolutely need them to understand my point of view. However, it seemed like my words were not reaching them. The next moment, they said something outrageous. Emma worries too much. It'll be fine. In fact, having one more person might even make our lives easier. Yes, that's right, as David says. That's why we truly welcome Lucy. What? What do you mean? At that time, I couldn't understand their reasoning at all. But soon after, I would come to understand the true meaning behind their words. I can't believe they were thinking such things. This incident happened one day while I was cleaning the house. I noticed my husband and mother-in-law talking earnestly about something. They both had quite sinister smiles on their faces, and while I told myself that eavesdropping wasn't good, I couldn't help but be drawn to their conversation and couldn't leave. Unaware of my presence, my husband and mother-in-law continued their conversation. "Hey, Mom, it's really helpful that Emma is better at housework than I thought." "Yes, really, David? You got a good wife." Is this a compliment to me? It seems they are satisfied with my housework skills, but something doesn't sit right. Why would they talk like this about me when I'm not around, despite never praising me directly? As I pondered their reasons, they continued their conversation, and their true intentions became clear. Emma is good at housework, and although Lucy is currently unemployed due to her pregnancy, she has qualifications that could lead to a high income in the future. If we use these two wisely, our household will be secure. What does that mean? At that moment, I realized they weren't truly appreciating me or praising me. Moreover, I realized they might not actually be concerned about accommodating my sister-in-law either. Then I heard the next thing my husband and mother-in-law said, revealing their true intentions. "Let's keep using Emma like a housemaid and Lucy as a cash cow to support the household." That's a brilliant idea, David. Really smart. This is terrible. In the end, they weren't truly valuing me at all. Their conversation made this painfully clear, and I felt a darkness descend before my eyes. Just as I was about to leave the scene, ouch. Surprised and in shock, I tripped over a small step in the hallway and twisted my ankle. Because I involuntarily cried out, my husband and mother-in-law heard me. They looked down on me and started talking. "What are you doing?" "It's really clumsy to fall during housework." Seriously, since housework is your only value, you should be more careful. At that moment, when they mocked me, something inside me broke. That's enough. With that resolution, I calmly declared, "I've decided to divorce you. I'm planning to leave this house." Until just moments ago, they had valued my housework skills and talked about using me like a maid. Even without love, they would surely be troubled without me. With that thought, I watched for their reaction. "Well, that's good. Get that parasite out of here quickly." David, we've finally gotten rid of the parasite. I couldn't believe they would insult me further at this timing. I only work part-time and have a small income. Meanwhile, my husband has been a full-time employee, climbing the corporate ladder to a high position since we met. To think he was looking down on me like this deep inside. Huh, are you still saying that? Let's end this. I have already contacted my father, and he is coming to pick me up. Great timing. I wanted to say something to your father, too. I want to see what the face of a parasite's father looks like. With that, I explained everything to my father. They were still laughing carelessly, unaware of anything. Their expressions changed a few minutes later when my father arrived. Emma, did you wait? David, playtime is over. What? Why is Mr. Hansen here? Really? Their faces turned pale as my father approached. Wait, you know Mr. Hansen too, Mom? Yes, actually, you too, David. Why? As my mother-in-law asked, my husband began to talk about his unexpected connection with my father. Actually, Mr. Hansen is a key executive at our company's major client. I never imagined he'd be Emma's father. What a thing. We should have checked properly. This is a big problem. So, what's the big deal? But why are you panicking too, Mom? That is. As my husband asked, my mother-in-law looked away and stumbled over her words, so my father explained their relationship instead. Actually, your mother was responsible for the accident that killed my wife. What? Unbelievable. Why would you do such a thing? Shocked, my husband could not hide his astonishment. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, now that her past was exposed to her son, was visibly disturbed and held her head. Your mother hasn't finished paying the compensation for that time. I thought she was making steady payments, but seeing such behavior doesn't seem like she's reflecting. No, that's not true. It seems like Emma is misunderstanding something. Misunderstanding? Emma, is that really the case? Since I was young when the traffic accident involving my mother happened, I didn't know about the subsequent dealings with the police or the perpetrator. However, after hearing the conversation between my father and mother-in-law, I learned that my mother-in-law was actually responsible for taking my mother's life, and I couldn't forgive her. In addition, there was the fact that she had been bullying me. No, it's not a misunderstanding. She was laughing when she said, "It's good that we could get rid of the parasite." When I insisted on this, my father glared more sharply at my mother-in-law and continued speaking. How could you do such a thing? This is unforgivable. Now you must pay the remaining compensation in one lump sum. Please forgive me. There's no way I can forgive you. And David, I have continued dealing with your company out of respect for Emma until now, but I will reconsider our transactions from now on. Please, don't do that. At this demand, my husband and mother-in-law sank to their knees, heads bowed. Maybe this will make them reconsider. That thought vanished in a moment. My husband and mother-in-law, as if they had realized something, their eyes lit up and they started discussing. Him? Wait, maybe there's a way out. You think so too, David? I think it will be okay. What do you mean, it will be okay? Confused, I questioned my suddenly optimistic husband, but after all, the issue with your father is purely personal, right? Even if we have to reconsider the deal because of it, it won't affect our connections with other companies, so finding new clients will be fine. If we clear that up, then paying the compensation all at once won't be such a big deal either. Huh, really? Will it really work out that smoothly? I couldn't understand where their confidence was coming from. Even as I listened to them further, it made no sense to me, so I stopped probing deeper. And just as I was about to leave to distance myself from my husband and mother-in-law, "Sis, wait a moment. Please read this on your way back in the car." While saying this, my sister-in-law hurried over and handed me a letter. "Thank you, Lucy. I'll read it later." After that, I took my daughter and headed to my father's house. On the way, my daughter, looking curiously at the letter I was holding, asked me, "Mom, what's that letter?" "Oh, this is from Aunt Lucy." "Wow, what does it say?" Although my daughter couldn't understand the complex situation, she was very curious about the letter. Curious myself, I decided to open it. "Oh my, I can't believe this." "What's wrong?" "Emma, what does the letter say?" My father, intrigued by my surprised outburst, asked about the contents of the letter. Responding to him, I decided to explain what was in the letter. Actually, it seems that their family favored David, the son, as they grew up. It looks like Lucy was also horribly mistreated by my mother-in-law and David, treated almost like a slave. What? That's terrible. While we were discussing this, my husband and mother-in-law had been treating me as nothing more than a maid, and my sister-in-law as a cash cow. Reflecting on it, when my sister-in-law came back, she was downcast and clearly didn't look well. Continuing the conversation with my father, I added, "She couldn't stand it anymore and left home 2 years before we got married." "I see. That story makes sense, given their behavior." "Yes, exactly." As I read more of the letter, my sister-in-law mentioned the father of her baby. After leaving home, she happened to meet a man and fell in love, got married, and eventually became pregnant. However, she was spotted by a friend of my mother-in-law during a prenatal checkup, and the news got back to her. As a result, she was forcibly brought back home to live together. So that's why Lucy is considered a single mother. It was natural for my father to be puzzled. From this alone, it's clear that my mother-in-law acted on assumptions without verifying facts. Lucy's husband was stationed overseas, and she was managing the home alone. But that assignment is supposed to end soon. Lucy's letter mentioned a plan to somehow escape this situation as soon as her husband returned. My husband and mother-in-law were under the impression that my sister-in-law was a single mother, but in reality, she has a husband. I wonder what Lucy will do now, although I've received thanks from her for the care I provided them at home. Well, there are concerns, but since it seems she is not a single mother and she sent you such a letter, she might be quite prepared for what's next. Yes, we just have to trust Lucy. Accepting my father's words, I resolved in my heart to believe in and support my sister-in-law, looking more closely at the letter. Lucy said, "This is a small token of thanks," and she included $300. I didn't intend to make her feel so obliged. What will become of my in-laws' home now? Amid these worries, the thought of their household possibly plunging into chaos brought a smile to my face. Later, I was able to receive the compensation and child support in one lump sum from my husband and mother-in-law. 3 months later, while I was living peacefully with my father and daughter at home, the phone suddenly rang. I wonder if that's a call from David. What could it be about? The compensation and child support have already been settled. Still, I decided to answer the phone. "Emma, Lucy has taken her child and gone somewhere. Do you know where Lucy is?" "What's going on all of a sudden?" "Lucy is probably overseas, I think." "What? How do you know that?" I was a bit puzzled when I was asked over the phone why I knew something after being questioned. I sighed and decided to explain why I knew. "Lucy gave me a letter when I was leaving the house, and it mentioned her husband who is overseas." "Is that so?" "Then you might know which country he's in, right? Can you tell me?" Saying that, my ex-husband was desperately trying to find out her location. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact location. The letter mentioned that he was on an assignment overseas, but it didn't specify which country. I'm sorry, but I don't know. That's problematic. I'm in trouble without her. When I told him that her whereabouts were unknown, my ex-husband murmured weakly, clearly disappointed. "Why are you so upset? What happened?" Feeling his despair over the phone, I couldn't help but ask. Then my ex-husband began to elaborate on his situation. "Actually, both my mother and I were relying on Lucy's savings. Since she disappeared, life has suddenly become tough." "Why would that be?" "David, you still have a job, and your income should be stable, right? Setting aside my former mother-in-law, who is a housewife, my ex-husband should still be working. The compensation and child support have been paid, and his income should be fully available for their living expenses. Actually, after we lost the deal with my father-in-law's company, I was demoted due to being held accountable. I tried to establish deals with other companies, but it didn't work out. So your income decreased because of that?" "Yes, that's right. If you understand, then please don't make unnecessary comments." David clearly couldn't hide his irritation while discussing this. However, with proper financial management according to their income, they should be able to support themselves adequately. There must be another reason they can't. "Hey David, aren't you trying to maintain the same lifestyle as before, even though your income has decreased?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" "You and your mother used to make expensive purchases on credit cards when we lived together. I think that tendency is continuing now, isn't it?" "Yes, that's true. In fact, my ex-husband and his mother have always had a tendency to spend excessively. Especially my ex-husband, he repeatedly made unnecessary expenses, burdening our finances. When Lucy started living with us, I felt that her joining was further straining our finances and making life more difficult. The reason lay in my ex-husband and his mother's deep-rooted habits of wasteful spending. Therefore, it wasn't difficult to identify the cause of their financial hardship. Anyway, please face reality. You and mother should take responsibility for the consequences of their choices. Relying on Lucy to solve your problems is entirely inappropriate. After making this clear to my ex-husband, I ended the call, added his number to the block list to prevent further contact, and also blocked him on Messenger. Since then, neither my ex-husband nor his mother has visited me, but one day I happened to meet the friend who introduced my ex-husband to me at a street corner. From that friend, I was able to learn in detail about my ex-husband's current situation. Emma, after your separation, it seems David has been struggling financially. He's been chased by credit card repayments and finally had to give up his house and start anew in a cheaper apartment. Really, that must be tough. So he ended up in this situation without ever reflecting on his actions. That's right. And David's mother has also been hit hard mentally by losing the house they had lived in for years, showing signs of dementia. David is now struggling, juggling work and caring for her, often complaining about it at work. Complaining at work won't solve anything. After hearing about my ex-husband from the friend, I truly felt pity, but he had tried to use both me and Lucy to suit his own convenience. Thus, I felt no sympathy for him, rather. I felt relieved to hear the news. When my friend finished speaking, he apologized for introducing my ex-husband, but I had also believed he was a good person at the time, so there were oversights on my part as well. I expressed my intention to maintain a good relationship with my friend in the future. Let's have coffee together again sometime. With that, we parted. Later, supported by my father, I found employment and started working while living at my parental home. One day, I found a letter from Lucy in the mailbox and decided to open it with interest. Oh, haha, Lucy, that's really great. Reading the words written in the letter, a smile spread across my face. At that moment, my daughter approached me curiously. Mom, what's up? Did something good happen? Actually, I received a wonderful letter from Aunt Lucy. There was also a photo included in the letter. Look, see for yourself. Wow, Auntie is smiling. The baby is very cute too. The photo included in the letter showed her smiling happily with her husband and baby. Currently, she has completely transformed her life, free from the influence of her brother and mother, and seems to be living truly happily. I, too, hope to attain happiness comparable to my sister-in-law's and enrich my life further. Above all, I wholeheartedly wish to live diligently for my dear daughter. My daughter and I, looking at the joyful photo, vowed in our hearts to move toward a bright future with smiles on our faces.